Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for our lecturer, Dr. Muhammad FAWWAZ bin Muhammad Yusoff, as our lecturer in subject Bibliography and Sources of Islamic Studies. We are from group PQC5. We want to review a book by Osman Bakar. First, I am HAFIZOH binti AHMAD. My matric number is 1182643.
My name is NAZIFA binti Muhammad ZINI. Matric number 1182649.
My name is Addina Arisa binti Omar. My matric number 1182777.
My name is FITRAH binti ABDUL AZIZ. Matric number 1182650.
It is book that we are review. The name of the book is Classification of Knowledge in Islam, a study in Islamic philosophies of Islam by Osman Bakar. It was published in 1998. This book has 330 pages.
Okay, so the next one is the abstract. Considering the significance of the subject of the classification of knowledge is a recurring theme in Islamic scholarship. Other than that, the author bring out the metaphysical and philosophical background which underlies the various classification considered in this study. The next one is, in this brief article, the list and the ideas of the three thinkers discussed in classification of knowledge in Islam. The author have selected Al-Farabi, Al-Ghazali, and Al-Qutubi, Ad-Din Al-Shirazi. This study, which follow, continue many enlightening analyses which are very pertinent to Islamic intellectual history as well as Islamic education, and this book must be considered as an important contribution to a better understanding of certain significant aspects of classical Islamic thoughts. Okay, next.
Next is the introduction of this book. The classification of knowledge is a recurring theme in Islamic scholarship. Classification of knowledge in Islam by Osman Bakar stated three thinkers, which is 1. Study of Al-Farabi's system of classification of the science. 2nd, Sunni theology developed by Al-Ghazali. And the third one is the burgeoning neo-scholasticism that evolved in the wake of the Mongol invasions and represented by Qutb ad-Din al-Shirazi. These three thinkers was either of a founder or an eminent representative of a major intellectual school in Islam. Al-Farabi was generally the founder and one of the most prominent representative of a major school of Islamic philosophy, namely the Mashai, which is peripatetic, school of philosopher scientists. Next, Al-Ghazali is still recognized as the most famous theologian or representative of Kalam, jurist, and Sufi of Islam. Last, Qutb ad-Din al-Shirazi represent the Ishraqi, which is Illuminationist school of philosophy. Qutb ad-Din al-Shirazi was also a gifted scientist. Al-Farabi was represented that important period which witnessed the beginning of intense activity in study of philosophical science, including mathematics and the natural science. Al-Ghazali in a period characterized by intellectual tension between falsafah and kalam, political and religions between Sunnism and Shiism, and spiritual tension between the esoteric Sufis and esoteric Juris. The last is Qutb ad-Din al-Shirazi represented one of the most challenging periods of Islamic history. He was witness to the fall of Baghdad and the destruction of many intellectual and religious centers in the eastern lands of Islam and the hands of the Mongols.
Okay, so the next one is the biography author. Okay, his name is Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar. He was born in Temerloh, Pahang, Malaysia. His education is he high school education at Malay College Kuala Kangsar. For information, his essays have appeared in numerous journals, chapters in various books, and in encyclopedias. His books, Classification of Knowledge in Islam, Tawhid in Science, and Civilizational Dialogue, among others, have been translated into Albanian, Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Indonesian, Persian, Spanish, Turkish, and Urdu. He also was Emeritus Professor of Philosophy at the University of Malaya, Malaysia, and an authority on Islamic science. Dr. Osman Bakar is the Malaysia Chair of Islam in Southeast Asia Center for Muslim Christian Understanding and is a member of the Center Academic Council, which is part of the School of Foreign Service, where he teaches courses on contemporary Islam in Southeast Asia, religion and science in Islam, and dialogue of civilization. Next.
And then coverage and relevance. For the coverage of this book, the first one is classification of knowledge as a landmark in Islamic intellectual history. The second one is historical overview of classification of knowledge in Islamic scholars. For the relevance, the first one is the modern ocean of information is vast and widespread, yet disorganized, chaotic and confusing, without direction and without intent. The second one is Islamic classification of knowledge can come to rescue. The classification information now needs a guide from Muslim scholar from ancient times to improve so that it is more better.
Next, the contents of the book. There are three major topics about Islamic scholar. First, Al-Farabi. Second, Al-Ghazali. And the third, Qutb ad-Din al-Shirazi.
Okay, the first Muslim scholar is Al-Farabi. Next, biography. Abu Nas Muhammad ibnu Tarhan ibnu Uzlal Al-Farabi. Abu Nasir Al-Farabi was born in 870 in Farab city. He died in Damascus in December 950 at 80 years old. Next. Okay, the first chapter is the life, works and significance of Al-Farabi. Al-Farabi finished his previous training in Farab and Bukhara. Later, he went to Baghdad to study and work there for a long time. He gained mastery in several languages as well as in several branches of know-how and technology during this time. He knew Turkish, Arabic and Persian and most likely a number of local Syrian and Greek dialects in Central Asia. Why? Al-Farabi, with the notable exception of medicine, has written many works on almost all the science branch known in the medieval world. Next, the second chapter is Al-Farabi's psychology in its relation to the hierarchy of the science. The first one is Al-Farabi subscribed most fundamentally to the traditional epistemology of unity and hierarchy in science. The second, Al-Farabi taught in psychology mainly on the Risalah fil al-Aqli, the Al-Madinah al-Fadilah, al-Siyas al-Madaniyah and Khusus al-Hikam in four of his famous works. And intellectual objects are to be received in the function of the theoretical rational faculty. It calls intelligible object, which is makulat. Next, the third chapter is the methodology basis of the hierarchy of the science. One of the fundamental articles of faith in Islam is that of faith in divine revelation, which is wahyu. Revelation has two corresponding dimensions to fundamental property functions. The first of this is the theoretical aspect. The second is the practical dimension. The term ilmu, which is science, is in many respects used by Al-Farabi and describe evidence, which is dalil, as an argument or reasoning in general by means of which the consensus is achieved. And the chapter is the ontological and the ethical basis of the hierarchy of the science. Al-Siyasat al-Madaniyah and al-Madinah al-Fadilah discuss the doctrine of hierarchy for being mainly in his two main works. Natural science, which is al-Ilmu al-Tabi'i, is the lowest philosophical science. The form, which is surah, and matter are each natural body, which is mudah. The math, which is ulum al-ta'alim, and the political science, which is al-ilmu al-madani, seem to be intermediately situated between natural science and metaphysics. The last one for the political science, which is al-ilmu al-madani, examines the different types of voluntary action and lifestyle. Next, the fifth chapter, classification and description of linguistic science and logic. The above classification with its detailed subdivision was composed according to Al-Farabi with a number of objectives in mind. Al-Farabi started his language science classification in 7 parts. He shows that the division is universal in that it is applicable to all language of the human race, which is ilmu al-lisan and ummat. The sevenfold division of linguistic science by Al-Farabi is claimed to be based on human language, anatomy, and the above mentioned two functions. The last one chapter is classification and description of philosophical science. Optics, fluid, and ingenious device, which in modern science form part of physics, extend far beyond the Latin quadrivium. With a definition of the discipline, Al-Farabi introduced his natural scientific division. The natural science of Al-Farabi is primarily a science of the principle of the various natural body species. The political science account of Al-Farabi will immediately be followed by that of jurisprudence science, which is ilmu al-fiqh. The political science, fiqh, and kalam of Al-Farabi have conceptually linked as all are revealed.
Okay, the next one is Al-Ghazali. Okay, first the biography. His real name is Abu Hamid Muhammad Ibn Muhammad Al-Tusi Al-Ghazali. He was an outstanding jurist, theologian, and Sufi. He was born in 540 Masihi and 1058 Hijrah at Tus, near the modern Mashhad in Khurasan, which is prior to his time, had already produced so many eminent Sufis that Hujwiri called it the land where the shadow of God's favor rested and where the sun of love and the fortune of the Sufi paths is in the ascendant. His original name was simply Muhammad. Al-Ghazali received his early education in Tus itself. The next one is spiritual retreat and scholarly output. Al-Ghazali spent his first spiritual retreat at the Umayyad Mosque and in Damascus. In Baghdad, Al-Ghazali could not fully continue his spiritual life because of family matters and other distractions. Okay, the next chapter is Al-Ghazali classification of secrets of the knowledge. In the Mumkid, Al-Ghazali divides the secrets of the knowledge of his time into four classes, namely the Mutakalimun, the philosophers, the Taklimids, and the Sufis. According to Al-Ghazali, to witness the divine presence is to attain the highest possible state of spiritual experience. Besides that, signification of the classification, Al-Ghazali study of the methodological claims of the four classes of knowledge enables us to establish his epistemological perspective. While affirming the superiority of the Sufi mode of knowing to all other modes, he remained attached to the Qalam perspective, and his internal criticism of Qalam was aimed at refining the rational methods of that science. Okay, for the next chapter is Al-Ghazali classification of the science. Have two main sources, which is the first one is the Book of Knowledge of the Ihya, and the second one is the Arisa al-Dunya. And the next significant use of his two other works, namely the first one is the Jewels of the Quran, and the second one is the Mizan al-A'mal. And Al-Ghazali refers in these works to different systems of classification, which is the first one is division into theoretical and practical science. The second one is division into presential, which is huduri, and attain, which is husuli, knowledge. And the third one is the division into religious, which is sharia, and intellectual, which is aqliyah, science. And the last one is division into fardu ain, which is obligatory on every individual, and fardu kifayah, which is obligatory on all science.
And then the third thinkers is Qutb ad-Din al-Shirazi. His biography is the birth of Qutb ad-Din Mahmud ibn Nudia ad-Din Mas'ud al-Shirazi is on 634 in the Persian city of Shiraz. He belonged to a family of distinguished physicians and Sufis. Qutb ad-Din received his early education and training in both Sufism and medicine under the guidance of his father. He was said to have begun his medical practice as early as the age of 10. Actually, he has many teachers, and I will state it in a report. For the rest of his life, Qutb ad-Din lived in Tabriz until his arrival. He died in 17 Ramadan, 710. The last 14 he invests were mostly in seclusion and committed to writing for years. He researched the hadith ardently towards the end of his life and wrote a few works on the subject. In Qutb ad-Din's work, he wrote numerous works on medicine, geometry, optics, astronomy, geography, the science of language, philosophy and religious science, including commentaries upon the Quran. Second, he has several encyclopedic works to his name in the field of science and philosophy. The last one is Qutb ad-Din divide knowledge earned into two kinds. First, philosophical works, which is writing on the philosophical sciences, by which he means metaphysics, mathematics, natural philosophy and logic and their respective branches. The greatest share of his philosophical works goes to mathematics, especially astronomy. He wrote nearly a dozen treatises on astronomy, most of which belong to the category of independent works rather than to commentaries. The second one is religious work, which is his most important works in this domain deal with the science of Quranic interpretation. Qutb ad-Din classification of the science. First, hikmah as the basis of classification. In Qutb ad-Din classification, hikmah is identified with the theoretical philosophical sciences comprising of metaphysics, mathematics, natural science and logic, and with the practical philosophical sciences comprising of ethics, economics and politics. Division of hikmah. Hikmah is knowledge of things as they really are. Its division into the different branches reflect the division of all things or existing. Non-philosophical or religious sciences. The first one is religious science. According to Qutb ad-Din are either first naqli, which is transmitted, second aqli, which is intellectual, or the third one is both naqli and aqli. Second, sciences that can only be identified through proof that they are, and the third one is received or transmitted from the relevant authorities.
Next is the recommendation. I will encourage the young generation of Muslim scholars, academic and postgraduate students to help revive this tradition in the contemporary world for the sake of both the Ummah and humanity at large. Because we need to revive the Islamic tradition of classification of knowledge and classification of the science. This is an important, but some people neglect aspect of the Islamic intellectual tradition. Next, the praise of this book that I can say is this book is very good to read and gain more knowledge about education in Islam. This is because in each beginning for these three thinkers is preceded by the introduction of biography for each thinker. From the introduction of the thinkers, it makes easier for the reader to recognize each of these thinkers. Next, the level of language is easy to understand but has some words that are difficult to understand. However, as a student, it is useful when reading it because we can learn new vocab. The last one is there are footnotes for each description that has been discussed. They also has the index on the last page of the book. With these two things, it will make it easier for the reader to find out about where they do not understand and make it easier for the reader to go to the desired page. For the critique for this book, what I can say is the description of some the description of the author use is very long and difficult to understand. With this long description, the reader will bored to read, and the way it is presented is too heavy for the reader to understand. But what I can say is, if the reader is the education in the Islamic, they will know and they will more gain knowledge from this book. Last one is the conclusion. What can I conclude for this book is the Islamic tradition of knowledge classification and science classification must be revived. The Islamic intellectual tradition has this significant but overlooked aspect. In order to revive this tradition both in the contemporary world for the sake of Ummah and mankind. Okay. This is the team member of this team, Nazifa, FITRAH, Hafizah, and Addina.
And that's all from us. Thank you very much for lending your ears.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.